So, Jerry, why is Pennsylvania such an important part in this election? Good evening.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me. And, Pennsylvania, the road to the White House always has to go through Western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. And, in large part, it's because of the demographic makeup of our region. Everything from sort of the old school steel mill working class culture, blue collar culture that we've had here in Western Pennsylvania for decades on end, the steel mill era and all that, but also large African American population here in Western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh in particular. And then, we have, the white women suburban population in Pennsylvania, but also in Pittsburgh and the outlying suburban areas. It's huge. It's massive. And we know in the post Dobbs and with the overruling of Roe v. Wade, reproductive rights is on the minds of a lot of people, including women, Republican and Democrat. And as a result of that, those demographics make for Pennsylvania being the, sort of center of the political universe. Hence why we have two presidential candidates on the same day, the day before the election here in Pittsburgh.
You being the vice dean at that wonderful place that is Pitt Law School, and of course civil rights, something that you fight for and have been known to fight for throughout the world and country, one of your expertise. Are our civil rights being threatened now more than ever, do you think, Jerry? Or have we come a long way maybe since the decade of the 60s and people like Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy and Martin Luther King?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the historical perspective. In fact, I was going to talk about this. Look, we've been through in this country some troubling, dark times. Civil War, Great Depression, World War II, right? Jim Crow, South, Civil Rights Movement, 9/11, right? We have seen egregious civil liberties violations and civil rights violations in our history, far worse than what we are dealing with today. Yes, the overruling of Roe v. Wade and the stripping of abortion as a federal constitutional right was a major, major development and change in civil rights and civil liberties. But that being said, on the whole, we've seen much worse. Now, increasingly, over the last several years or so, we've seen states move in directions that seem to be moving in a direction of restricting civil rights, civil liberties. But I do have to say, just from a historical and constitutional perspective, we've seen, worse years and worse days before. And so I'm not overly concerned about that. That being said, we still need to, I think, in many ways, think about those past victories and how those victories are important for our civil liberties and look for ways to make progress to strengthen those protections, strengthen those civil rights. And I think, we're on a path to doing that. And the presidential election right now is sort of the core of talking about many of those issues.
Jerry Dickinson from the University of Pittsburgh, my guest for the first two segments of our final hour tonight. And getting to know him in recent months, he will be a part of this radio show in the weeks and years to come. I guarantee you that. I love his knowledge and I love his thought process. So, where do you think this nation needs to be lifted up more than ever after this election? What can we have learned from this election, and what do we hope to gain from this election, Jerry?
Yeah, I think, moving forward, we have a lot of polarization right now, political division. And I think in thinking about moving forward, we're thinking about moving beyond polarization. And that sort of starts with each of us in many ways, sort of making an effort to engage in honest, respectful conversations. That's not happening right now, right? The divisiveness and the polarization sort of has, the Democrats and Republicans yelling at each other and from ideological perspectives. And this doesn't mean that we can't agree when moving forward after this election, but it does mean that we're going to be willing to listen and seek understanding. We can also sort of work together on issues that impact everyone, because in many ways, Rob, as you know, many of the issues that the candidates are talking about right now, they affect you, me, white, black, Latino. I mean, they affect all of us in some way, shape, or form. So it's not like this is, for them or for us. It's us together. And I think if we recognize that sort of unity, then we recognize that we can have diverse views, but then come together and realize that the, movement in terms of fixing our economy, fixing, our social issues, it's going to be about us as a nation. And as I said before, we've been through dark times in this country. Each time we've been through those dark times, we've come out a better nation. And I think that's really important for us to understand. Now it's a dark time right now, but we've been through this before. We've come out on the other side much better, and I'm hopeful that in moving forward, we're going to come together as a country. I know it happens every decade or so. We usually move forward with things, and I'm hopeful for that.
Vice Dean, Pitt Law School, of course, Jerry Dickinson, my guest on Kdka Radio tonight. Here's what frustrates me. I grew up in a melting pot of a neighborhood, people from all walks of life, religious beliefs, ethnicity, and we were just all members of the human race, and we looked at each other and treated each other with the way we wanted to be treated. I know the border issue is an issue, but I still believe there are a lot of people who are coming into this country doing everything that they can, even risking life and limb, to have a part of this thing that is the American dream. Look, when I was growing up, there was always someone that didn't speak English, had an accent, was learning how to actually read and write American, meaning English, and trying to fit in and raise their family, and were a big reason why we were able to build America during that industrial age. They weren't all born in this country who worked in those steel mills to make America great the first time. Why is there such an issue with people from other parts of the world when really we were all immigrants at one time, and those who were born in this country had to struggle from the very beginning, many of them, Native Americans, Black Americans, just to find their place as well. But we were willing to help each other and stand side by side. So what's so different in 2024 as opposed to 1904, Jerry?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, United States, we're the beacon of immigration throughout the world. And it's been that way for the last 100 years, if not longer. I mean, we are sort of the shining light on the hill when it comes to opening our borders and allowing folks to come from other countries to settle. And as you noted, Rob, long history, Ellis Island, right? And Polish, the Germans, Italians. I mean, long history of this, and from Latin American countries as well. So, we have a long history of this. What has changed, I think, over time is that the issue of immigration has become a political bludgeon. That's really what's going on here. It wasn't a political bludgeon as much as it was in the past, but now it has become one. And now all of a sudden, the questions about borders and security and national security sort of revolve around this question of immigration. And that, I think, has harmed the greater conversation about how we've been such a great nation for opening our borders and allowing folks to come in. And I think that's really important to understand. And, I think we're going to move towards, I think, a more understanding notion of immigration in this country once we get past this election, no doubt about it. But I think the politics of immigration have really played a role in sort of divisiveness and dividing us on that question, when in reality, Rob, we are the beacon of immigration. And I hope that we can continue to be that way, because we are a better country because of immigration into this nation and helping us make progress in so many different ways.
It was a recipe for success then, and I still think it is now. Jerry Dickinson, one more segment, yep. University of Pittsburgh. We'll be back. It's your Pratt Pack on the eve of the election 2024, KDKA, 100.1 FM, AM 1020. Good evening.